Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. We've a very good show lined up tonight for you as we look back on John Morrison, the legendary GA coach. Obviously a proud Armagh man, but sort of was everywhere. Was with Derry, Mayo, Leitrim, on a whole raft of counties and clubs throughout the country. So I think everybody in the GA has a good story to tell about John Morrison. And telling their stories tonight will be Paddy Savage, Jim McCoy, and Turlock O'Brien, who all knew John. And of course, this week marks the second anniversary of John's death. So thanks very much for joining us, lads, and we'll get stuck into it here. And I suppose, Jim, you and John took over Armagh in the early 90s. You obviously knew John quite well. What struck you that you wanted him in your management team?
Well, I think the first thing, Sean, did you mention Armagh as one of the teams that he'd actually managed? There are not a great list of all these counties he's
managed.
No, he was, but he will tell you he was manager and I was assistant manager, but I've been telling McGinney that for his last 3 years. He didn't believe me either, so listen, I'll tell you the thing about John was at that time, whenever I was asked to take on Armagh, I was back in 91, and I remember it actually well because Father Haggerty was due to come back in as manager, and I'd been coaching in Caleeby for a couple of years and was really enjoying it, first sort of club and enjoying getting stuck in. And I was asked by Father Haggerty, would I come in and do assistant manager trainer of the team at that time? I was absolutely delighted to do that. But Father Haggerty, God rest him, he couldn't do it in the end. So the county board then, representatives asked to meet me at the time. I remember it was an interesting meeting to say the least on it, but I went thinking they were going to say this is the new manager who's been coming in, and I want to still to stay on as trainer, but they asked me to do manager. To my surprise at that particular time, but I remember actually thinking at the time then and his name come up at that night, at meeting that night, as a suggested assistant manager trainer for the team, because he had a great reputation with club. He'd been with, I think he was actually with Blackwater Town that particular year as well. And he was building up the reputation even that far back for his innovative training techniques, which he's been famous for throughout, on his shy way of putting things over, shall we say, So I'd known John as well, so I contacted him, first person on the list I contacted, and he said, "Where and when, Jim?" And he came on board, and it was 4 fantastic years. We developed a great friendship. We had some laughs traveling together on the long roads, the training sessions and matches, and he was fun to be with. He was a brilliant character. Stories galore, which I was still hearing before he died, God rest him. I was still hearing the same stories I heard in 1981. But you still would have to laugh at it. He was a real gentleman, as everybody knew, and at Armagh, right to the core. But wherever he went, he gave it 100%, had a great reputation, and was remembered very fondly by everybody who came across him in football and in life generally.
And Paddy, what's your memories of John? I'm sure you spoke to him many times, maybe in the media room in Armagh. He was always the first one in it and probably the last out of it. Would you have had many dealings with John yourself?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the biggest memory I have of him of these absolutely terrible jokes. He just, like really awful stuff, sort of Paddy Englishman, Paddy Irish, Paddy Scotsman, sort of, just because I remember I'd be coming into the media room, and I was quite at the start. I was very nervous with doing commentaries. I didn't have a whole pile of experience, and then you'd maybe say, "Oh well, John, whatever," and he'd say, "Paddy, come over here," and I said, "This must be something really, really important," and he'd just tell me, maybe 5 minutes before you were going on air or something, 10 minutes before the game, I just tell you some absolutely awful joke, and he's probably doing it to try and distract me. He's probably seen that I was getting overexcited. I suppose one of the first memories I have of him was after I was commentating on my own club in a championship semi-final, and we never actually got to the final before, and it was sort of before I'd been involved with the management and that, so it was just I was commentating, and I probably should, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have been commentating on my own club, but I sort of half lost it with about 10 minutes to go. It was game, luckily we were beating, we were 4 or 5 points down, 10 minutes to go. The game hadn't gone for us at all, and we were falling with injuries. And anyway, we came back and we made a sort of miraculous comeback and won the match. And I sort of got a bit overexcited, shall we say? And there was after the game, John came over to me and he says, "Paddy, will you do me a favour?" I said, yeah, John, whatever. What is it? He says, "Will you go? You see, when you're on your way home, will you go into the hospital there just to check that their heart's all right?" He was worried that I was about to have a heart attack, that I'd gone bright red. But yeah, and look, he was such a knowledgeable man, such a civil fella, you know. And to be honest, you know, I had the privilege of interviewing his son Paddy about him, and there's so much about John's life that I hadn't a clue about. Some of the community work that he done, that he, you know, within in Armagh, it were troubled times, you know, back in the, you know, back right in the height of the troubles, like what he was doing, and then, you know, like he was chairman of Harps. He must have been only in his sort of maybe late 20s, early 30s, you know, and he was taking that on, and like being the chairman of a club as well as everything else he was doing. It's unbelievable commitments. But yeah, he's obviously such a knowledgeable figure. Like, I know from my own perspective, in terms of sort of having an interest in football and analysis and that sort of thing, you know, it was actually, Turlock, you'd done a piece with, I don't remember, it was one of the media outlets after he had passed away, and then you were outlining just how you'd gone up and how helpful he'd been, and, you know, the how much you thought of him. And to be honest, I remember just listening to the interview, and thinking, God, I had access to all that. You know, I had access to all that information myself. You know, if I had and I never, you know, I regretted that I'd never sort of taken him up on it. You know, because he was obviously going to be only too willing to help. So it's really, you know, and I know, speaking to Paddy about it, that obviously it was a devastating time for them, but they took an awful lot of solace in all those stories that people had of it. Just what a brilliant character he was.
And Turlock, your first meeting with him was really interesting. You were sort of telling me about it earlier, that you had read one of his coaching manuals and decided to jump in the car and come up to Armagh. You'd never met him before, you didn't know him, but you went up anyway, and true John fashion, he invited you into the house.
Yeah. Look, I suppose it was before the internet and before there was, you know, a library of coaching books and manuals around, and there was very little material in the GA world for coaching. For any young fella trying to get into coaching and trying to develop and get new ideas, and I was mad into GA, mad into coaching at a very young age. I was still playing football. I was coaching a minor team, and so certainly down here, I would say, I always up to Ulster, and I always felt that the game in Ulster was so tactical and so tribal. There was this, you know, the Ulster Championship just so fantastic, and I read about John, of course, in some of the newspapers, and I think was he with Antrim, was he at some stage, and there's stories about him with an orange beret and putting a skip outside the door of the dressing room, and I was fascinated by him, and I knew he had done a book, and I couldn't get it down here, so I said, here, into the car, drive up to Armagh, asked a few people, where did John Morrison live? 3 Cathedral Terrace, arrived at his door, knocked at the door, and there he is in front of me, large as life. So he brought me in, and I have it here still. That's the greatest little coaching manual I think I've ever come across, to be honest with you. And that and John Wooden are my two Bibles. And I live by that. I still use it. But we developed a great friendship out of that. And I took over the Oak senior football team in 2005. And I brought John down for a few sessions, you know, but the players absolutely adore him. They adore him, you know. And it's just a larger than life character. He's so generous with his time and his knowledge. There was nothing he wouldn't share with anybody, even the opposition, I would say. And the reason he did it was this, because nobody could replicate the way John Morrison did it. But that was the reality of it. I tell you, look, I have here. There, every Mayo training session, the year they got to the All-Ireland final, he gave me everything signage, you know. But to go and try do that session, you wouldn't be able to do it. That's the truth. So he was very generous, but no, he was a brilliant man. He was a brilliant man. He was a psychologist, you know, as much as anything else. And he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And he used to ring me, and I'd ring him nearly every day at the height of it all, like nearly every day. And like yourself, Jim, he'd send me down the Ulster Gazette article every week, and he'd take a photograph, send it on to me, ask you to have a look at that, what do you think of it? And you'd be talking about that for 2 days, you know, and sure, what could you add to it, like, you know, because it's always brilliant, you know. And, but he brought me, he allowed me, he was with Derry with Nicky Moore, and I remember up to Owen Begg. And it wasn't that you go to see the training session, he actually brought you onto the field in the middle of the training session with the Derry team. And he did the same in Mayo. You know, like, it's just incredible access he gave me as a, you know, a coach from Carlow, knowing you, and, you know, who were Carlow, like, you know, really, like, so maybe we were no threat, like, but he was so generous, like, you just would not get better than John Morrison. And on a personal level, even, like, when, you know, different times, maybe when work isn't going well, and, you know, you needed someone to talk to, John was the first person you'd meet, that you'd ring, and he'd always give you the right advice, the right tone, and put down the phone, and you don't have a problem anymore. And that's the type of man he was, you know. I loved him. Absolutely loved him. And when he came down here to the club, like, he picked up everybody's name straight away, like, you know. And it took a while for lads to get to understand him, because he's such a strong accent, you know. But I loved his ideas, and I really believe that, you know, we don't understand the impact he has had on coaching all over Ireland. Because I hear in present day, you know, in the coaching terminology around the country, it all came from John. I heard it 20 years ago, and he was using it. And I know that a lot of top managers who got to All-Ireland finals were ringing John and bringing him to sessions. I was at one session in Cork with him. Cameron Cohen was manager at the time, and they all bounced their tees off. You know, Kerry were on to him, how would you break down the Tyrone defence? You know, he didn't get the credit he deserved. Everybody deferred to him, but not too many said it.
And like you talked about him being a sort of psychologist, like, and I have a few quotes here from him that I'll share with you. These is probably three of the better known John Morrison quotes. So there's so many. Like, he was great for one-liners and quotes and stuff. And this one, like, don't think it, ink it. I always loved it. It's a really catchy one, but, like, he was probably before his time with stuff like that. That, you know, every player now, especially at county level, has a diary, and, you know, does all their workouts and all by the book. Like, was he away before his time with stuff like that on the way he was coaching?
Oh, he was, yeah. He had, every session had a theme, every session had a purpose. And as I say, you know, you got that handout before the training session. You had diagrams, you had buzz phrases, buzzwords, and you knew what they meant, and it was your own language within your team. And you know, it was a really big help on game day. You know, he could shout instructions from the sideline, and you knew exactly what he meant, what was to happen. I mean, there's some great names for some of these lineouts, and, you know, the nut and the arrowhead and the spine and all of those things, you know. But, you know, they meant something, and you had a visual picture in your head, and he was really big into visualization. He was a psychologist without being a psychologist, you know what I mean? And I think someone said that the manager should be the psychologist, and there's a lot of truth in that, you know. And he was the king of them all, to be honest with you.
I think actually you're wrong there, Carl. I think managers need see a psychologist, not to be one.
Psychiatrist.
But I think as well, it wasn't even, I mean, what you've said is 100% right, Carl. I mean, the knowledge that he had, the expertise, but it was the personality, I think, added into that, you know, because that larger than life character, you know, and he didn't take himself seriously at all. I mean, I remember just at the start, you know, and you're talking about DeBerry. I mean, the Berry started off with his first job with me, and he had the orange Berry, the French style with the wee bit in the top, put over to the side. He had the blue anorak. Before we got the Armagh coach, the coach's coats and the tracksuits and all for the guys. He had the blue anorak. and he had boots, like walking boots, mountain boots you would use, and he had the orange laces in them. And he'd patrol up and down the sideline. You know, this was like a lot of people you're saying about, people coming to watch him from the coaching point of view. People come to watch, wasn't much watching Armagh playing, but maybe watching what you always want to do at the sideline, because he patrol up and down the sideline as well, you know, and it was entertainment. Now, when I say that, although you get the impression, well, this is all about showman and it's all about him, it's not. It was all about how the team are performing. That was the way he was to get messages over to people, with that personality, that larger than life, the jokes, you know, that Paddy talked about, that I said at the start, were recycled. It's even hearing them, you know, shortly before he passed away, we met in the Armagh City Hotel for dinner one night before he went to football, you know, and I was still getting some of those jokes well back. And the notes, Turlock, that you were referring to, you know, I've been coaching as long as John, and at that stage, and he was still giving me training tips going to Armagh that night. And he brought me a list of his, these are the new training games that I had, Jim, but they were all shorthand. It's like that, those training plans you were talking about for Mayo, you know, to try and sort of decipher some of that. When he explained it all made sense, all his wee acronyms for the different drills. But absolutely fantastic, great character, you know, larger than life. Didn't take himself that serious, you know, but was very, very dedicated to everything that he did, you know.
Oh no, he was a terrific man. Yeah, one of the greatest things he did for us in our club. Erogues, you know, have had a fantastic history and had a great time in the 90s. You know, we won 5 Leinster titles, but after those 5 Leinster titles, we went to a dark place. It looked like we were never going to win another championship, quite honest with you. And that's when I came on board in 2005, because I just got fed up looking at, I didn't want to train any senior team, I just want to train minors. Loved working with minors. But we were making such a dog's dinner of our senior team that I put the name forward anyway, and I became the manager that year. And we went to Loughree College for a weekend, and we had a full weekend with John on the Saturday, and went through so much stuff. We had about 20 lads up, and it's a tough day, and we stayed in Loughree that night. But the next day, the players didn't know this, but the next day we went to Laddie and we played the Derry team that were playing in the All-Ireland quarter-final, I think, a couple of Sundays later. We played a full Derry team, club team from Carlow. The confidence, the belief our lads got out of that, like sharing the pitch, like with Enda Muldoon and Sean Martin Lockhart and these lads. It was just one of the most fantastic things that could ever happen, and the belief they got, and that was a huge thing for us, you know. He just did crazy things at times, you know. They were trying out their game plans, and we were trying to defend against them basically, you know. And we were really pleased with ourselves at the end of the session, you know. We put in a great shift, you know, and just great experience for lads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paddy, as Turlock says, like, he come down and helped his club. Like, he was so good like that you could literally ring him and say, look at John, our club we're trying to work on something here, or an underage session, under 12 session or something. Could you come down and give us a hand or give us something? And no problem, he'd have done it, no issue at all. Like,
yeah, look, the lads have covered it perfectly. Like, to be that generous with their time, you know, it really speaks. It's the measure of them, you know. And then, you know, when you also think that he's passed that on, you know, his son Paddy has a massive interest in coaching as well, you know, coaching as well, and goalkeeper and coaching and doing something that, you know, doing something different there. And you know, it's great to see that he's, you know, he's passed that on. But yeah, just a gentleman, you know. You know, you couldn't say anything negative about him.
yeah, definitely. Like, he was so.
It wasn't even.
Go on ahead, Jim.
No, I was just saying, even, you know, the point that Paddy's saying about, it wasn't even just in the football either, because I know, you know, he had health issues, obviously, you know, that, you know, everybody talks about these things afterwards. Everybody talks about how great people are, you know, whenever they're not here. Don't sort of tell them whenever they're here on it, but he did an awful lot of stuff. You know, Paddy touched on some of the stuff he did in the earlier part, you know, on the club and time during the Troubles, you know, working, you know, the community end of it and working with kids. He did an awful lot of work with kids at underage at that time during very, very difficult times. No, but even, you know, in terms of the illness, he sat with, we actually shared a surgeon in Craigavon Hospital, because the time I had the cancer I went in, and lost a kidney. He was also been treated with the prostate end of it, and he was involved with the surgeon. He was actually on the Northern Ireland committee as a representative to try and sort of promote, prostate awareness and work on that as well. So he would give up his time, and I sort of thought to myself as well, I could just imagine him going into that committee and going into the first meeting, with all these experts on, men's cancer treatment, and telling them what they needed to do and how they needed to go out disseminating this information. That's the type of character.
Yeah. And he would be a big addition to that committee. He would. His talents were unlimited, and he often told me about, working with prisoners during the Troubles and visiting the prisons and the work in the youth club as well at the height of the Troubles, and difficult times to be involved with stuff like that, but he was a great man, and he took his influences from everywhere. He wasn't just football. He was interested in soccer and rugby. He was over in Leicester Tigers there for a few sessions, and anywhere he could get it, he learned as much as he could. He never stopped learning. And he always come up every morning, looked in the mirror, and he says, "I'm getting better looking each day." that was his approach to life. It really was. Like you, Jim.
Jim, you were obviously with him in Armagh, as we mentioned, in the early 90s, and I know that a few of the team went on to win All Ireland in 2002, and we'll just see a few of them here. There's obviously more than just these four, but they're probably four of the main ones. You made the National League final in 93, won the McKenna Cup in 94, and obviously a lot of that team went on and won All Ireland in 2002 then. How big was he? How big of an influence was he in getting these boys to the level that they were ready to win All Ireland in a couple of years' time?
I mean, it was massive. I mean, that meeting that I referred to in 91, whenever they asked me to take over, I remember part of the discussion was, I think this is nearly quote verbatim. We don't expect you to win anything in your time here, Jim. You're inheriting the worst panel of players ever. But we wanted to develop the whole thing moving forward. And so obviously we needed a whole change in player personnel and an attitude, and in everything that we did on it. So when John and I sat down, there was an awful lot of things that we went through to try and improve the way, the whole demeanour of the team, the whole attitude of the team on it. And we were probably one of the first counties in Ulster, if not further, to bring in sports science. And I mean, as the guys will tell you there, and Turlock had up in Carlow as well, you had, every top club teams have sports science now at a level that county teams would have. So I mean, we brought in our own sports psychologists then. And I think, again, in terms of John was probably telling, this guy was called Heinz Tittmar, obviously from a German background, but you have some of these guys back in 91, and like the big Grimley back then, that weren't that interested in some of these new techniques, and this guy trying to, get them to visualize lying on the beach and feeling the warm sun on their face and stuff, and close their eyes, and you see them opening one eye at each other on, but John was into this big time, obviously, from his own interest in sports psychology, and we brought in nutritionists to advise on the food and hydration, whole thing had to be done right, performance analysis. So, I mean, probably John's thinking at that time, a bit like myself, we needed to do things differently and improve. And, as Turlock rightly says about his interest in all sports, we looked at other sports and what we were doing, the better sports on it. But the one big thing in addition to all that, so you have all this preparation, which was going to be good. The boys were saying, at the time, we used to have to share gear. We got them all their own individual gear. We got them their own individual tracksuits. It wasn't just shared tracksuits for the subs. We got them their own bags, trying to get it all this sort of better camaraderie and team image going forward on it. But we were still missing probably one of the key ingredients, which was, the player personnel itself. And those ones that you put up, I mean, some of them were there, but the likes of the younger players coming through, you had the minors at that time, which were a fantastic bunch of players. So you had Barry O'Hagan, you had David Morrison, you had Oisin McConville, Paul McGrain. These were just like, young fellas coming through, but we brought them in to integrate them early, got them playing together. I think Paul was the last one. He was still at St. Coleman's College when we were talking to him about coming in to the senior squad. And they were integrated really well into the team. And that then, for me and John, because we spoke about it afterwards, quite a few times, that You know, although we got through the National League final during that time, which was actually a great achievement considering, you know, where we started off in '91. We won a McKenna Cup as well during that period, you know, so we know Ulsters, but we started a lot of foundation work that time, and a lot of foundation work that, you know, the two brands really benefit from afterwards, you know, in terms of setting the Ulster, and then Joe after that in terms of winning Ulster and All Ireland. A lot of that was down to the work that John would have done at that particular time with those young players, with his coaching techniques, with the advice that he would give them, you know, and I think that's a real, you know, testimony to, you know, to the type of impact that he would have on teams. It wasn't always, you know, that you would have been getting the cups and winning all the time, but the development, you know, and the one thing I think is a bit of a lie. Somebody asked me, you know, these different teams that you've had on it, you know, what do you look back on? You know, that's the important thing. And the fact that you're still contacted now by guys you would have coached years ago, asking for advice, you know, and still referring to stuff you would have done with them on it, you know, that's a real testament. And certainly, as the guys have said, and Turlock's alluding to, he's known throughout the 32 counties, you know, and he would have helped everybody on it. So I think certainly those guys that you've shown and others that were there, you know, everybody benefited from what he brought to the football field, both from the coaching point of view and the fitness end of it, you know, because he's an expert in terms of preparing teams physically as well, but just in terms of having the right values, you know, and talk about this whole thing now, you know, what type of values the team have, you know, John brought great values as a person, and that sort of came across onto the team as well for me. So great legacy to have, I would have thought.
Jim, they must have sort of got a lot, I'm sure, from that. You mentioned that run to the '94 league final, and it sort of seems hard to believe, as I know. Now, but you like Armagh, like actually used to hammer Dublin in that quarter final. It wasn't a close game at all, and it was a massive shock result because you weren't at the time. You know, you didn't have to be in Division 1 to get into the latter stages of the league. And I'm sure just getting that. I remember that my own first trip to Kilcock Park. I was a young fella at the time for the Laois game and then the Meath match. And them players would take, I'm sure, took an awful lot of belief of being able to compete outside the province from those couple of games.
Yeah, I mean, it was massive. That time we were Division 3 and we won the Division 3 and went through quarterfinal, semi-final, into the final on it. But, I mean, we had a great bunch. I mean, Hooley was playing first that time. Obviously, he was involved with the soccer. And John would have been Turlock referred to it earlier as well. You know, with John's conduct, he would have played a bit of soccer, played for Glenavon, one of the good soccer players. I would have told you he was a good soccer player, you know, in his modesty. But I mean, with Hooley playing and scoring the goals for us that time, and remember the celebration, you know, Hooley's particular celebration. But we managed that whole thing with Hooley playing with Sligo. It was a great bunch of players that all worked very well together. But as you rightly said, Paddy, we weren't expected to go on and do that. But when we got to the final, you know, I think part of it, you know, on the day, you know, your football preparation is one thing, but you've all this stuff in the periphery and what people are filling you full of in the outside world, you know, how great you are. And you know, you when you go to the national final, you know, you get your suits and your ties and all your sponsored gear. And, you know, probably one of the biggest things to do, you know, is, and you do in hindsight now, is just to make sure you treat that as the same as a normal game. It's hard to do for them, and, you know, maybe the occasion a bit on it. But if I remember that as well, you know, that they got the 2 goals that made a big difference. That was the difference in the winning and the losing that day. And if they hadn't won, it might have been a different story. But the belief to get there was great. If we'd have got that, I think we'd have kicked on even more at that particular time. But it wasn't to be. But it was a great experience, and one I'm glad that I shared with John, very honest.
Like one of the biggest John Morrison stories, obviously we'll take a look at it here. We know all about it. It's very famous at this stage. In 2006, All Ireland semi-final against Dublin, and of course Mayo go up and warm up. There's Pillar racking into John. That was those 6 semi-final. Dublin, obviously, as always, they warm up in front of the hill. Mayo come out first. They decided that's where they're going to warm up. Do you think, is that a bit of John's mind games, or maybe was that a decision taken out of the management's hands, maybe?
Well, I don't think it was actually his decision, in fairness. I think the players took that on themselves, I think. But the ironic thing is, Pillar and himself were good friends, very good friends before that, you know. So he obviously thought that it's something John would do, and he targeted John with the shoulder and the back, you know. But look, sure, it was a great thing. It was a great thing. It was great. It's a great talking point since, you know. But look, he did play mind games. There's no question of it, you know. But I don't think that was one of them. To be fair, you know. But you know, the influence of one man though can make in a county like. It's very hard to understand that one guy can change a whole, you know, culture around the team, like, you know, and you know, John and Mickey, I suppose, when they were in Donegal and Mayo, like, you know, they made an instant impact, really, like, you know, and unfortunately they got shafted in both counties, you know. But John was with Leitrim as well with Mickey, and even that, you know, like he had a huge influence in Carlow as well. I saw Leitrim like Carlow in the National Football League. I wasn't involved with Carlow. And John and Mickey were managing them, and I could see exactly what they were doing because we had trained them with the club. He'd shown it to us, but when it was all new to our county team, they were so tactically naive at that time in Carlow. You couldn't believe it. That's how far behind we were, like. But you could see the impact though that John's coaching had in Leitrim, and Leitrim and Carlow would have a very small playing population, but it shows you that the right man can make a massive difference in any county, you know, and. He was a master tutor with the GA. There was a group of them, and I really felt that GA didn't maximise what they had there in that group. John was exceptional, like, but I thought they should have used him on a national level much more than they did. You know, I thought he was badly treated, to be honest with you, by Croke Park. I thought he had so much more to offer, and that group they were doing great work, and. Maybe they're seen as a threat, I don't know. But, he was outstanding, like, and he was a maverick. He mightn't agree with everything that Fisher maybe wanted, you know, but I think there was their loss, you know.
Lads, that's all I have time for. Thanks very much.
Sorry, Sean, I'm going to have to, Sean, can I don't know, and this will take me too, but I couldn't leave it without saying the big thing that I will remember John for, and it's actually not, it's the county final back in 2017, and Turnock, you mightn't just know, but his son Paddy pulled off wonder save, the best save that you'll ever see in Armagh club football. And the thing I'll always remember about John is just the look of delight on his face and just how proud he was. And that was not he done all them wonderful things himself, but I'd say he never got more of a kick than he did from that save. And I thought it would have been a pity for us to finish, Sean, without mentioning. Poor Joe McManus didn't get a lift home. I think he used to get a lift home with John, and John in his excitement had to go down to the Hearts dressing room and tell poor Joe that he just had to wait for his lift.